you have no idea when you first start a company how big it'll become or what it's going to be. You're just like, I love doing this. I think it tastes great. My mom thinks it's awesome. Let's see if other people like it.
You gotta pick yourself up, go backwards, and slam yourself at the wall like 500 more times until the wall crumbles.
25% of middle school girls already believe they'll never achieve their dream career.
Hi, I'm Kara Goldin, founder and CEO of Hint, and you're listening to Unstoppable, a podcast spotlighting the journeys of inspiring entrepreneurs. I believe that at its core, leadership is about constantly learning from the people around you, and I'm so inspired by the conversations we're having in our upcoming episodes and can't wait to share them with you. This season, some of my guests include Andrew Doughp, founder of Hims, Erica Nardini, CEO of Barstool Sports, Danielle Dubois and Whitney Tingle, co-founders of Sakara Life, and much, much more. Plus, we ask the million-dollar question, what does it really take to be unstoppable? Let's find out. Hi, everybody. It's Kara Goldin from Unstoppable, and I'm so excited to have Kelsey Moreira here this morning with me to talk a little bit about entrepreneurism, but also about her great company that she founded and is the CEO of called Doughp. And you may have seen her in a few different things. You were definitely on Shark Tank, and which is so cool. And you've got a great product. And even though, as I always emphasize to people, our product is about not drinking sugar, I always tell people that, hey, if you're going to have a little bit of a treat now and then, like something like your product, that's not so bad, right?
Responsible indulgence.
Indulgence. You know, Kelsey, just tell us a little bit about your journey. When did you start? Why did you start it? And just give us a little bit of an overview.
So I started the company in April of 2017. It was 420 in San Francisco, and I set out to a park in Dolores Park. A lot of people listening in SF probably know it, and had 100 pounds of cookie dough and went out to see if anyone was into this edible cookie dough that they could eat. And sure enough, on that day, lots of people were interested in having some dessert. Some of them we had to remind it's not edible in that context, but edible in that it's safe to eat. So it's an eggless recipe. I wasn't always a food company person. I've always been a foodie and lover of trying different foods and baking, but I spent 10 years working in tech and had spent a lot of time at Intel. I started 16 years old as an intern and had a really intense childhood diving right into, corporate America at 16. I didn't really get a chance to be a normal high school kid. So the stress of life in corporate America led me to a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol. But when I got sober in 2015, I rediscovered my passions for baking and really passions for everything I love in life. Was totally on coast mode before. And when I got sober, it was just like, what makes Kelsey Kelsey? And a big part of that is desserts. If anyone knows me, I've got like the biggest sweet tooth in the world. So finding a way to make desserts my life was my new mission. And I quit my job and started Doughp in April of 17. And on we went, serving edible and bakeable cookie dough to the masses.
I love how you just shared that you took it to a local park, Dolores Park in San Francisco. And so did you know when you went over to Dolores Park, like you were going to launch this product, or were you actually kind of trying to like get consumers' reactions to it? Or
yeah. A bit of like test the waters. Like, I mean, it was February of 17 when I first had this idea that, man, I'd been baking vegan for almost 2 years then. Since I got sober, I tried out like, what if I removed everything from my life? So I tried being a vegan. So when I was baking, I was using this substitute for raw eggs, but still using butter. I love butter way too much to ditch that. And so I had this decadent thing and I was just like, maybe people would like this. Everyone loves cookie dough. There's all these different recipes of trying to like, make like a cookie dough cake or cookie dough cupcakes. And I thought like, instead of digging for the nuggets and the ice cream, maybe people would want like a whole scoop of it. And so that day at Dolores was really, let's test the market. It was my first day of sabbatical with Intel. You get paid time off for doing a certain amount of years there. So after 10 years, I was taking a 10-week vacation. And I just thought, man, there's no better time to like try a business out and see if it works than with, somewhat of the safety net of like, if it doesn't work out, I could still go back to Intel, but yeah, at the end of those 10 weeks, it was like, I can't come. I have like 3 events today. I've got to put in my 2 weeks notice. This is going to be it for me. So yeah, you have no idea when you first start a company how big it'll become or what it's going to be. You're just like, I love doing this. I think it tastes great. My mom thinks it's awesome. Let's see if other people like it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Did you know when
Yeah.
you were at you mentioned you were at Intel. Did you know that, one day you were going to go be an entrepreneur, or were you just sort of like, I mean, in my case, I never said to myself, I'd always grown up around entrepreneurs,
Yeah.
but I never, said one day I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And I think it's always such an interesting,
Yeah.
question, because half the people I meet are like, oh yes, I always knew, I was just going to go do, some time in a larger company. And then eventually I was going to launch my own company. I mean, in my case,
Yeah.
I'm curious on yours.
I feel like I certainly grew up with the models and examples of like, you just go to school, you get a good job, you work at that job forever, and like things are great. I had 2 parents that they lost their jobs in the recession, but otherwise had always been, he's like 13 years in residential home building. My mom had been a banker for a long time. And so it's just sort of this like, yeah, you go and get like the steady thing. I didn't have really any like entrepreneur role models in my family to look out of like, oh, they went and built their own thing. Great business people. But my mom was like getting her master's when I was like 8 years old or something. So she's super smart and sharp. And I never had the women can't be in business kind of like model. I totally thought like, I'm going to kick ass. But being an entrepreneur wasn't like what I thought I would do. I knew I loved like what I was doing at Intel. I loved working and I loved, the marketing side of things. And I always just felt like too fast for Intel. I guess it was just like, I felt like I wasn't going to ever get the full, like my full potential out. And when I had started as an intern, they'd give me like some set of tasks. And then that afternoon I was like, okay, like, here you go. Like, what's next? And they're like, we thought that was going to take you like 2 weeks. Like, what do you mean you're done? Cause I just like was so hungry for it. But I had sparks of like entrepreneurial dreams when I was a little younger, wanting to like go and do my own thing. I was babysitting when I was like 12 with business cards and like a pamphlet. I'd go around door to door, like telling people I'd be a great babysitter. So I had a little bit of that. But once I got into the real world, it was like, no, you just get your job, you go and you do it. And eventually, once I had sort of that clarity of sobriety, I was like, I don't think this is going to be enough forever. I need a little more action, a little more fun.
So the next step after Dolores Park was what? I mean, people always ask me, like, how do I have this idea. I think people are going to like it. I've tested it with friends and family. Now what? Like, how did you get out of the gate at that point?
Yeah. So I had built this little catering cart. So it's like a wooden cart for $500 at some like wood shop in Soma. And that was at day one, just like I wanted some neat service vehicle, something like people might want to take a picture in front of or something. It would look more attractive than like having a table. So I had that and I thought, well, now that this like one day has worked, I can lean into catering. Like there's tons of tech companies in SF and lots of places that would want, some dessert treat. So that's sort of where it first began, was doing the catering circuit. And then I reached out like the day after Dolores, I wrote Spark Social. It's a food park in San Francisco, and told them, I have this cookie dough company. Like, would you guys be interested? And they wrote back in like 2 hours and we're like, we love cookie dough. This is such a great idea. Like, when can you start? And I'm like, oh crap, like, how do you run a business? Like, what do I need? What licenses would I need to do this? And like, what would it even look like? So it all just like came really quickly from there of figuring out what final licenses I would need to operate there and what kind of setup I would do. So I stuck with my catering cart, had like a backup table for extra dough, and got a little pop-up tent. And I used to take, like, I just didn't have a vehicle when I was living in SF. So I'd have like an Uber XL pull up outside of my apartment, have hauled all the equipment down to the lobby, like load it all in that car, go to the event, set up, work the like 4-hour, 5-hour shift at the event, and then like load back in another Lyft, like XL, Uber XL, whatever, and go back. So that was 7 days a week. For the first 2 months, I was alone, no employees, and I'd make all the dough in Oakland at a commercial kitchen that I had found. So just like going into stuff with the most positive attitude that you're going to make it happen. And like, people are going to say yes, you're going to get the help you need. And like, it really worked out in the beginning, because that commercial kitchen had like a 3-month wait list, but I was so passionate about what I was doing, and she wanted to give me a chance and like bump me up to the top to get in. So I was making all the dough like once a week, going over and making 100 pounds or so, and then coming back and doing a few more days at the park and the catering. But I had one week where I had like 7 events in a row, just every single day back to back. And the next week had no events. And I'm like, I can't, if I'm running like the service every day, I can't keep growing the business. So that's when I finally got a couple of employees and grew it from there to end up getting some physical storefronts and starting to put our toes in the water on e-commerce and what that would look like. So with shipping, you know, just these like, I think I was using deli containers back in the day, like the 8-ounce deli container filled with dough, and people could order online. But early days, it was more just like my cousin in Ohio, you know, wanting to try it and stuff like that. But e-commerce has been really incredible for us now. So it's just all starts with those little inklings of maybe this would work.
So what were you doing at Intel?
I was a product manager. Yeah, product marketing engineer for some of the years. It's a term that they have for kind of being the liaison between what engineering teams are capable of and what the customers and the market wants, and trying to drive a product roadmap. So I worked for most of my time at Intel on enterprise stuff, so big business, business stuff. And then I ended it with the Internet of Things, did like 2 years in that group, which was really cool about like, how are we getting the world connected, all the information coming off of sensors and how that could benefit different industries. And I had 1 year, which led a lot of the philanthropic stuff that we do with Doughp. One of my last years was in diversity and inclusion at Intel, working on an online harassment campaign against online harassment to use machine learning to detect it online. I know you're big on Twitter, so I'm sure you see a lot of the chaos that happens on there. And it was a look at like, what could we do with technology to drive change in that space and give people an option for a more like stress-free environment online when they want it, not necessarily censorship, but like those options to like, hey, if I don't want to go through this or experience this, you'd have that chance. And we were partnering with a bunch of nonprofits working in the space. So just cool to see like how many people out in the world have dedicated their life to trying to just do good and make the world better. And I was really inspired by that, to see, besides just serving you a scoop of cookie dough, how could I make things a little happier for you?
That's awesome. So I feel like you've just had this journey of just, you know, lots of different things sort of kind of splattered into, you know, your overall journey. But, you know, the e-commerce, very much self-taught. I mean, you've just kind of figured it out, right? And I mean, so many people say to me, I mean, 40% of our overall business is direct to consumer. And so many people say to me, like, how did you know how to do it? And I actually had some experience at AOL running a group there. But what do you think is sort of like the most important thing for people to do? Like, where do you start with e-commerce? Where did you start? Did you set up your own store? Did you go through Amazon? What do you think is kind of the best step for people?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a big learning experience in the last couple of months. We transitioned to Shopify, and if I could go way back, I would say to anyone, start on Shopify or a small, like advanced platform. Shopify it's kind of like that first to market stuff where they've gotten so big so quickly that all the third-party integrations that you want are just seamless through there. They've made a lot of stuff easy with even turning on some buttons for the paid advertisements. If you're not at the space to pay for a professional agency to run it, there's a lot of self-serve stuff on there. When I first got started, I built my website on Weebly, drag and drop, so simple, you know, like that's what you need in the early days. Is just like something that's going to walk you through it instead of trying to learn how to code, or maybe, you know, using funds to go and get a web developer in the beginning. So whatever website works for you, I think finding a tool that's like an easy DIY, because you're going to need to make all the changes yourself in the early times, and like what's easy to fulfill orders and contact your customers. And you just want to make sure you're starting yourself off on the right foot with the right tool. The rest of it, I just Googled the hell out of it. You know, it's like Google's your best friend with some of that, figuring out how to optimize like the packaging and how we should wrap things, like the insulation that's going to be needed. You know, your product doesn't have to be cold when it ships, but if I don't think about that, someone's going to get a pool of butter in their jar.
Right.
And so that was kind of some extra considerations of like, what are those right ways? You do a little testing, like order from similar competitors and see how they're packaging their product. That gave me a lot of, insights on what didn't work in some cases and what I thought was helpful for others, both in like the information you provide in the package, like really think through what that experience is going to be like for your customer opening it. Too many companies just go, okay, here's a box there, put the product in, that's it. But like, the little details, like think about those packages you've gotten where it had the like extra wrapper on the top and it's sealed with the sticker, or like whatever your brand elements are, like making sure that comes through. Like we have a warning label on the outside of our box that looks like kind of like a perishable warning label. It says like warning, ridiculously good cookie dough inside. So you can play around with it and like try and get stuff that screams your brand even from the outside of the box, because like that postman could be my customer. So
Absolutely.
I want him to look us up.
No, I love that. So in addition to sort of trying something, I mean, it's crazy to think that e-commerce is new, but there's so many food and beverage companies that really, haven't even dipped their toe into it. And I'm such a huge believer in really understanding who your customer is and all the benefits of, being able to grow your business that way, as well as, offline as well. But I think it's really about, there's benefits to sort of having a little bit of both or a lot of both in order to make up your overall sales. One other thing that you did that I think you became somewhat famous for, at least in my mind, was you went on Shark Tank. So talk to me a little bit about that. Like, how did that happen? I mean, I think so many people talk about like, oh, if I could just get on Shark Tank. I mean, how did that happen? How did it go? And, what was
micro famous?
Yeah. What was your overall experience with it? And what do you think it ultimately did for you?
Yeah. So I went like the tried and true route. I stood in line at an open casting call in San Francisco for like 3 hours, showed up at like 6 a.m. and sat on the curb next to like, someone wanting to sell like a crazy, like motorized water boat, and another person who had like safe sunglasses for kids or something. People just have all these ideas, and you're just like one of the lot, sitting there hoping that your idea and that your pitch is going to stick. Had my bag of cookie dough and little insert cards and photos and stuff I was going to show them. And you had 90 seconds to pitch why you'd be the best entrepreneur to go on. And when I went in, the producer, Mindy, came by the table, and she's been their producer, like going through the casting producer for all the seasons. And she picks up a tub of the dough and like starts eating it. And it's like, oh my gosh, like this is so good. 90 seconds has already totally passed by. Like I'm still there answering questions. She's like, I tried the one and, on the East Coast, and this is so much better. And I'm just like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. It's like 3 minutes in, and, they don't tell you yes or no at that moment, but I sure left there being like, okay, this seems pretty good, and got the call back. And they asked for like, I think it was like 4 or 5 more rounds, like phone interviews, video submissions, like quick video of what your on stage pitch would be for the final filming. And then you get told like, okay, you're going to be filmed. I think I found out the beginning of August of 18, and it was September 13th that I would be filmed, and September 14th was my sobriety anniversary. So it was a cool, like universal things lining up. Like, man, like things are really working out from this choice that I made. So I got filmed that day, and it aired in May of 19. So went on. I've literally never been so sure I would pee my pants, except for the moments before those doors opened. It's like the nerves are just incredible. I was standing there, and I'm, alone. I was a solo founder, and they count down from like 50, it seems like, until they'll open the door. So you're just like about to pass out, but the doors open, and I just thought, I've prepared my whole life for this.
Wait, so where were they?
It's in LA.
Oh, it's in LA. Okay.
Yeah, in LA, like giant warehouse. You see this living room set in a hallway, and it's like 100-foot ceilings or something. But yeah, the doors open up, and I hit that mark, and you have to awkwardly stare at the sharks for like 30 seconds so they can capture all of your like serious thinking faces. So that's a little nerve-wracking. And then the yell begin, and I did my pitch, and I was in there for an hour and 15 minutes, and you only see like 8 minutes on TV. So pretty crazy, but it was a really cool experience. I mean, I got to share that I was sober on TV and that kind of journey, and people reaching out from there was just awesome. We had this woman write in who said she had lost her son to the disease of addiction in February, and for some reason, the only show she can tolerate is Shark Tank, and seeing Kelsey felt like a message from her son. And like, she's just so grateful that I was out there sharing, my journey. And I just felt like, man, if nothing else happens this year, like at least like that one person felt a little warmer with what she's going through, and reinvigorated me to keep doing what I'm doing. We touched a lot of people sharing that work. So my story and what we do with Doughp for Hope is worthwhile.
So although you didn't ultimately get the sharks,
Womp, womp,
yeah,
womp. Yeah.
you ended up getting, I mean, talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think like going on Shark Tank is just like great for the exposure of it. And in some people's cases, they actively go on, they're not wanting to get a deal because they can be quite, by the name, sharky, and take more than they really should when you can get capital elsewhere. I had 123 investors write me after it aired, but I had also already gotten investment just a couple of months after filming. So we got the money that we needed to open the store in Vegas. It's like, no matter, how many no's you get, I was totally crushed when I left the show, like hysterics, thinking like, how did this happen? How did they say no? And of all things, like, how did they say no over it not being healthy for you? It was like, at the end of the day, just like you and I have spoken about, like, it's dessert, like have your kale salad for lunch and have some dessert. But yeah, picked myself back up and kept going on the fundraising trail and got the money that I needed for that store. And here we are quite a bit later and the store's still kicking. We got Doughp Day on March 16th in Las Vegas for that store's grand opening. So
that's awesome.
It's a good
time. Who was the nicest shark?
I think Robert. I mean, I'm a big fan of his, and he just said so many nice things about my skills as an entrepreneur. And like, he's like, if this were any other product, I would invest because I'd invest in you, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Just really complimentary. And yeah, I follow him on Instagram and stuff. So big fan of his. If he's listening, call me.
And
we can do a healthy dope line.
It's interesting because you just never know where those, 5 years from now, you have no idea, like they'll show up in your store in Vegas and, I feel like it's all part of the story and it happened for a reason. And
yeah,
it's such the number of people who would love to be on Shark Tank and you actually got on there. It's
the odds are insane.
Yeah.
There's like 42,000 people that apply every season.
Is that right?
And there's like 120 people get filmed.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So the odds are like 0.002% or something. It was pretty surreal. It was super, super cool for sure.
So you also shared with me that this morning you got an award for one of 40 under 40 in Las Vegas. So you moved your company from San Francisco to Las Vegas. I should mention that as well.
Yeah.
And so, well, congratulations. That's so huge.
Thank you. Yeah.
And awesome. That in addition to one of Forbes 30 under 30s. So you're just racking them up, all people recognizing what you're doing, which is super, super cool. So what do you think is the key thing that, like, why do you feel like what is it that you're doing that people are seeing that, they recognize you for?
What's different?
Yeah, like when people are, they're starting a business. What do you think you talked a little bit about your social aspect, social good aspect, I should say. But also your social media aspect. What do you think are sort of key components today in kind of building and actually being recognized?
Yeah. I think it's in part just giving a shit, like doing something that you care about. Like you have a lot of passion around why you're doing what you're doing with clean water, and with me and Doughp, trying to make the world a little sweeter at its core is what we're all about. So I think the recognition has come from my work around mental health and addiction recovery, and trying to make a world in which we can really talk about what's really going on or has gone on in our lives and not have it as this like cloud of shame. The stats behind how many people are going through troubles with mental health or battles with substance abuse are just astronomical. And the more we sit around and pretend like everything's fine and it's all like rosy and all this, I think I built a brand that started from the decision to be open about what's really real, and being raw, both in our dough and our conversation is powerful. And I think people are really craving more authenticity with brands. So you mentioned social media, like that's been a large place for us to just have more of that transparent, conversation with customers and be on there like a real human, and not talk like a sales engine all the time. And try and be a little more real. And having, some people, I talk to some entrepreneur friends who are afraid to put themselves at the forefront of the brand. And it's like, but at the end of the day, like that's you, that's what people want to see. They want to see why this company exists. And they want you to have a great product that's good for the world and tastes good and all those things. But wanting to lead with, your story or share why you're doing it is inspirational and exciting to people. So I think Doughp's having the biggest impact, the big impact that we are, because we're trying to give back. So I can tell you a little bit about Doughp for Hope. It's kind of the overarching initiative at Doughp to give back around mental health and addiction recovery. We have fundraising efforts for nonprofits that work in the space. I'm a big believer that you don't have to go and recreate the wheel. There's already people going. So I just want the wheel to move faster. So we raise funds, and our customers get to come in and vote for which nonprofit they'd like to receive the funds from their purchase of Doughp for Hope. We've got mental health policies for our staff. So for any other entrepreneurs, employers out there, trying to treat your staff like humans is really powerful. We give all of our staff, working with a retail storefront, we have hourly staff who, occasionally just can't do it. You just can't come as your full self to work that day. And so we give 2 mental health days per employee, and that's per year. So they can come in and call us and have that opportunity to say, look, I can't do it today. And without financial penalty, we'll do what it takes to cover their shift. So that helps open up just a much more realistic dialogue between employer and employee, and let them know that, we care. We also fund mental health certification and suicide prevention courses for our staff. And then the last thing is our pledge online. So anybody out there, you guys can go to Doughp.com and sign the Doughp for Hope pledge. And it just says you'll agree to be more real in the world and speak up when you need help and be there for a friend when they need you, and spread a little bit more awesomeness. So you can sign that and share it online with others. But yeah, I think that stuff's kind of what makes it a little more than cookie dough.
That's
I sell dough, but the real reason I'm around here is to try and make people a little more authentic.
Well, I think so much of your personality comes through on, not just interviewing you, but also just in your brand. I mean, everything from the titles of your cookies, the ride or die, is one of my favorite ones, and Monster, Cookie Monster and stuff. It's super, super great. So I feel like
I was always saying hiring a marketing person is going to be the hardest task that I have, because the brand is Kelsey. The voice is so me. It's tough to any entrepreneur that's really into building their brand, it's very hard to hire someone that can emulate that voice. Shout out to Connor. She's doing my social media lately. She's doing a great job.
Yeah, no, it's great. I think it's, it's at every stage you start to, get to a point where we actually we've had heads of marketing, VPs of marketing, but we just recently hired our first CMO into the company 14 years later, because that was a hat that I, wore and still wear. I mean, it's still very much, you
guys share
my vision. It's a huge hat. But we want it to get bigger and grow the brand and really be able to,
so important.
And also allow me to, do different innovation in the company to actually bring the brand into, more categories and more places. And it's great. So how about you?
I only have a few more years till 14 years in. So you're telling me I get a CMO in 11 years.
So so how about you in 12 years from now? Or less than that, 11 years, right? Because you started in 2017. So 11 years from now, what's Kelsey going to be doing? What is Doughp going to be all about?
If I'm running at the same pace I'm running right now, I hope that I'm on a beach somewhere relaxing.
And eating dope, right? So
eating some dope for sure. Yeah, I think the evolution of Doughp over the next, even few years is going to be really interesting to see how else we can get this product out. I think when I first started, it was this concept of, you can eat cookie dough raw, was really new. No one else was really doing this. And now there are a lot of competitors in the space. So just the constant evolution of what's going to make Doughp different beyond, our give back initiatives and the brand itself. How else can we package it? What other audiences could we be serving? There's some really cool stuff in the works on that end.
I love it. That's so great.
Yeah.
So where can people find you as well as Doughp? Can you give a shout out for your address and all that kind of stuff?
Totally. For one, if anyone's coming through Las Vegas, we got the best party on the strip. Come by the Doughp Cookie Dough Bar. We're inside Miracle Mile Shops, and it is in Planet Hollywood. So right across from the Cosmopolitan. A lot of people that like Doughp end up staying there. So it's a good placement. And we've got a vending machine in the front, so 24/7 access to cookie dough if you come after hours from the store. But you can also order online. We ship nationwide, coast to coast. It's Doughp.com. That's DOUGHP.com. And we're at Eat Doughp on everything. So you can find us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Eat Doughp. And I'm at Kelsey Moreira or Moreira, Kelsey Moreira 6 on Instagram. I think I'm Kelsey_Moreira on Twitter. Who knew this last name was so popular? It's taken on everything. I've had to do different variations.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
So great. Well, hopefully we'll get to see you. Will you be going to Expo down in March?
Yeah, I just got a request to speak at it actually on a mental health panel.
Oh, that's great.
Around kind of, taking care of yourself in entrepreneurship and whatnot. So I'm following up with some of the folks from New Hope on that, but hopefully I'm there. Are you guys going to be out there?
We have a booth there every year. So
Amazing.
So you should definitely, if you don't have a booth, you should definitely walk the show and come see what's going on. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
You can come hang out
I'd
at the
love
Hint
that.
booth if you'd like. So
100%. I'll have like a little bag of dope jars. We'll just hand them out in the corner.
So fun. That's so
awesome.
That's so great. Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much. And everybody go on and order Doughp and
dig in.
Yeah, and dig in, and your Hint water to just wash it down. It's so good together. So
that's awesome.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks everybody. Have a dope day.
If you like what you heard, please help spread the word and leave us a review. You can also follow along with me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at Kara Goldin. Do you have a question for me or want to nominate an innovator to spotlight? Please talk to me at Kara Goldin on Twitter. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, be unstoppable.